Hello.
Hey, Rabbi, good evening. How are you?
Oh, fire!
I only missed one Monday. Come on. You know,
The
I tell you,
impression that you left when you weren't there, you have no idea.
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, this is work. The work gets in its way. What can I tell you? Retirement was great.
How's everyone? How's the family? Okay.
Yeah, thank God. Everybody's good. Everybody's
Good,
good.
good. Baruch Hashem. Good, wonderful.
Mhm.
Okay, it's just us tonight. Oh, we have more people. There we go.
Yeah.
Shmuel, good evening.
Hi, Robert. Hi, Mayor.
Hey,
And I think I see Rita down there. Very good. Oh, there's someone else. Grace.
Good evening.
Good evening, Grace. How are you? Erev Tov.
Erev Tov, yes, thank you. It's almost Lila Tov for you.
Yes, it is. It really is. I actually have to have a nap so I can be like semi alert for this class.
Good for you.
How has your week been?
Baruch Hashem, it's been good. It's good.
Good.
I came across your class. I came across Rabbi Berger's class. It's starting the year great.
Good. That's wonderful. And I understand that Be'ezrat Hashem, the first Shabbat in December, I will be joining. I will be having a great Shabbat with you.
Okay, I'm going to make sure I come into Vancouver then.
Okay. Put in your calendar. That's wonderful.
I will. First Shabbat in December.
Yes.
Is that correct?
we
Okay.
actually are going to be out of town that Shabbat, but it
Oh,
is what it is.
Meyer.
Yeah, I mean, the board knew, but what can they do? I mean, I'll get you on the next one, the one after that. Yeah. Mm.
Bad timing, Maya.
Yeah. And I think Miri and I were planning a Shabbat of unity and gratitude, everything that Meyer espouses. Okay, I guess we should get started. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. So this evening I know we've had a little, taste of some in-depth discussions regarding kosher milk and kosher meat and shechita. And I thought that this Shabbat this week we would sort of do a little bit of a tangent and talk about kosher wine. I know that Stan, Dr. Adamski, had some questions about kosher wine at the first introduction class, and hopefully he'll catch some of this, if not all of it, on the recording. So we're going to talk about grapes and wine and all the halachot that is surrounding that as well, and then the health implications of consuming wine or grape products and the great benefits and health that come with that. So I hope you come away with a lot of good information this evening. Okay, so in the eyes of the Torah, Be'ezrat Hashem, let's get started. In the eyes of the Torah, the quintessential beverage of nature is the fruit of the vine. It's grape wine. And our Chachamim tell us of the importance of wine throughout the calendar year and throughout the life cycle of a Jew. The Jewish people, it sanctifies Shabbat and Yom Tov over wine. At the Pesach Seder, we express the four expressions of Geula, of redemption over wine, of freedom over wine. We recite the Sheva Barachot at a wedding, or Sheva Barachot over wine. Or the Brit Milah, after it has taken place, the blessings are done over wine. Havdalah is done over wine. So you see, like, wine has a very powerful sacramental value in Jewish life. And to the extent that even a special beracha, special blessing, was enacted by our Chachamim on wine. And we don't just say Shehakol Niyavid Baro, we say Borei Peri HaGefen, who creates the fruit of the vine. Now, at the same time, that being the case, with grapes and wine having such a sacramental value, at the same time, there are basically Torah prohibitions very severe ones of drinking or using wine that was used for any sort of idolatrous services. That's called yain nesech, and we're going to get into that. And then there's also a rabbinical injunction, very strict, against drinking what is called unsupervised grape wine, and that's called just stam yenam, regular wine of others. And so because we have these two very, very strict injunctions, there is the requirement for really good quality kosher supervised wine is very critical. And to this day, kosher wine production remains one of the most sensitive, tedious, and difficult processes to oversee. So before we get into a lot of the good evening, Ron.
Good evening.
And so before we get into the before you pop the cork on your favorite bottle of red wine or white wine, we're going to get into talking about what is wine, how wine is made, and what steps must be taken to ensure the wine's kashrut throughout the production. Okay, so first and foremost, as many of you know, and maybe some of you, I've always wanted to do this, never had the chance, to make sort of wine in your basement or brew beer, or that type of thing. It's a great project if you have the wherewithal to do it or you have the space for it. Ron, did you say that you were doing it once at one time, or was it somebody else?
No,
Okay.
I wasn't.
Okay, so wine is defined as the fermented juice of grapes. That's a very simple definition. And however, the beracha that we recite, Borei Pri Gefen, the fruit of the vine, can also be recited on non-fermented grape beverages too. So, grape wine beverages can be divided into either alcoholic wine, raisin wine, and grape juice. Those are the three main areas. Okay, so we're going to talk about, first of all, alcoholic wine, a quick sort of tutorial on the production of alcoholic wine. And wine production takes place at the time of the grape harvest, which is usually once or twice a year. And the grape harvest usually occurs, and it usually coincides, I should say, with the high holiday season. And grapes are carefully picked and transferred to the winery, where the grapes are crushed or pressed. And the crushing or pressing can be done mechanically or manually, like you've seen in some pictures or some YouTube videos where they're sort of, stepping on the wine with their feet. I've seen that before. Now, from the moment that the grapes are brought to the winery, the mashgichim, the kosher supervisors, have to be on a constant alert to prevent what is called hamshacha. Hamshacha is basically it's an inadvertent, irreparable act, and that disqualifies the whole winemaking process. Now, what is this hamshacha? So hamshacha is defined in the tractate of Avodah Zarah in the Talmud as the separation of the juice of the grape from the grape skin. That's called hamshacha, literally drawing out. Okay. And in production terms, any movement of the grape juice along the production line that is initiated by a non-Jewish person anywhere along the line, whenever qualifies for what is called hamshacha. If this hamshacha, this drawing out of the grape from the grape skin, is done by a non-Jewish person, anywhere, whenever the juice is pressed, sampled, when it's conveyed into the plant or pumped by a hose, the production then is disqualified. So that being the case, it's so strict in the sense that there has to be an observant Jewish individual has to initiate, must activate, has to operate every essential step of the crush, including the fermentation, the standardization, and even taking samples for quality control. So for this reason, the winery really has to have a crew, a very sizable crew of qualified mashgichim throughout the duration of the crush, and a smaller crew during what are called standardized operations. So that's all the ins and outs of this process. Now, the first step of production that is common to all types of wine production is what's called the crush, where basically, like we said before, the grapes are literally crushed and they're destemmed. Okay, from this point on, depending on the wine color, the type of wine, the region where the wine is produced, production that is customized to achieve whatever taste is desired, fragrance, aroma of whatever variety of wine that they're looking to produce. Okay. Now, the grapes that are destemmed are broken down into three components. There's what's called the must, which is the juice itself. There's the pulp, okay, and then there's the skin, okay. And quick foreshadow to the second half of the class. The skin is really healthy, really really important for health, and we'll talk about grape skins in a second. Okay, now these three components are then sort of conveyed into fermentation vats. The fermentation is, like we know, is the natural process that converts the grape juice into the wine. Now, for naturally fermented wine, there really are no additional ingredients that are required. Why? Because there actually are natural enzymes that are contained in the skins of the grape that affect the change. They catalyze and cause the fermentation to start to occur. Okay, natural yeast also is contained in the grape that converts the sugar into in the grape juice into alcohol and carbon dioxide gas. And now, as the gas escapes, the juice then bubbles or ferments, bubbles violently, you want to call it, ferments. And for red wine, the skins are left in the fermentation vats longer, so they absorb the purple color or the red color. And for white wine, the juice, the must, ferments without the grape skins, okay? Now, total fermentation results in a dry wine, while partial fermentation gives a sweet variety, a semi-sweet wine, let's say, or depending on what you want. Okay. Now, if the vat is not airtight, the juice then is going to turn into vinegar. Okay, which just also has halachic implications as well. Okay. Now many wineries are actually already cook, or hi Stan, good evening. Many wineries actually already they pasteurize the wine at a very early stage of production to avoid this whole concept of hamshacha, of risking inadvertent drawing out of the juice from the grape. Okay, so this bishul, this cooking process, is defined halachically as the point when the juice begins to bubble. Now, there are some technicalities here. Although there are opinions in halacha that maintain that bishul, that the cooking or the pasteurizing is fulfilled once the wine begins evaporation. Generally speaking, a lot of kosher agencies, a lot of kosher standards, certifications, they're very strict. And they exercise stringencies, and they require that the wine actually should be cooked at the higher temperature to achieve this sort of this bishul, or this cooking, or this pasteurization, and that's generally at about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. Now, once it is cooked, considered cooked, so to speak, the wine can no longer become stam yeinam. It's no longer now considered. It doesn't qualify as the wine of anybody else or any other nation, so to speak, and it can no longer ferment naturally. So when they do it in the early process, hi Mary, good evening. So when they produce the wine, when they do this pasteurization in the early process, then all of a sudden you've sort of got to add backwards. Now you have to add outside wine enzymes must be then added to the juice, so you have this artificial fermentation that can occur. Okay. However, even then, there has to be some sort of a supervision that's needed at that point as well to make sure that only kosher wine enzymes are used. Okay. All right. So either they ferment early. So either they pasteurize really, really early in the process to avoid some halachic issues, and then I guess the drawback is you lose the natural enzymatic activity that's found in the skins, and you have to sort of add back, artificial or kosher wine enzymes to then start to ferment the process as well. Okay. Now, in the United States, most kosher wines use this method of fermentation, where they'll pasteurize first. For California red wines, the bishul, the pasteurization takes place after fermentation and clarification. So that's the original method. And there's also basically a combination of natural fermentation and additional additives of wine yeast that are used to ferment the red wine. Generally speaking, California white wines are pressed, they're chilled, pasteurized, and then they're fermented. Whereas the wineries that are found in New York, they add sugar to their wines to achieve their sweetness. Kedem is a really big well-known winery. In some New York wineries where all the workers are Jewish, wines are naturally fermented, and after fermentation, the wine is then aged in storage casks to mature and develop flavor and fragrance. Okay. Now, during the aging process, wine has to be transferred from cask to get rid of sediments and all sorts of settled solids like the dregs of the wine. And after the maturation process, then the aged wine is filtered and is bottled, and then that's when we get to enjoy it, I guess. Now, at some of the sensitive points of the development of wine, so for example, the aging, the blending, the standardizing, non-mevushal wine or traditional wine that is not pasteurized, not cooked, must never be uncorked, and it cannot be sampled by a non-Jewish person. All right, so that'll result in a disqualifying hamshacha. We want to avoid that at all costs. Now, for wines that are already pasteurized or mevushal, tanks have to be sealed with the seals of the kosher supervisor to assure that there's no tampering. So that's basically, in a nutshell, the tutorial on alcoholic wine. Now, we don't see as much of it in the common marketplace. Raisin wine, okay? They do use raisin wine to a certain extent in bakeries when they want to bake like mezonot buns or juice challah buns type of thing. So raisin wine is basically a soaking of dried grapes, and that's made from water. And the added water compensates for the moisture that is lost. The normal ratio of raisins is usually 3-to-1. And although from a sort of, again, a Jewish legal perspective, as long as the raisin concentrates accounts for about 18% of the total volume, the raisin wine is acceptable, okay? Then this combination sort of soaks and ferments the raisin until the wine taste is absorbed into the liquid, okay? Now, then we have grape juice, okay? And now grape juice is principally made either from Concord or Muscat grapes, okay? After the grape crush and pressing, the juice is chilled and decanted. Decantering basically is the process of separating and clarifying the grape juice. The grape juice then is sterilized at 180 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, again, to inhibit any sort of growth of bacteria. And no fermentation takes place during the grape juice process, all right? And so, when it comes to grape juice, the whole kosher supervision is really much less intense than for wine or raisin wine. Okay. Now, at the same time, however, there has to be some care has to be taken to make sure that there's no outside blending or standardization that occurs without the watchful eye of some sort of kosher supervision. There's a question that's often raised regarding the criteria in determining which bracha to say on grape juice, which is reconstituted from concentrate. You'll have a lot of juices that are made from concentrate. Well, they have like the concentrate, add back the water, and then you have a juice. So there's a question in halakha whether the bracha is actually shehakol or it does actually qualify as grape juice to make kiddush on it. Okay, so a lot of authorities in halakha, Rav Moshe Heinemann, for example, with the star K, they stipulate that there have to be two conditions have to be met for the grape juice that is from concentrate to qualify as borei pri hagefen, as wine that's used for kiddush or for Shabbat and Yom Tov. The first condition with this concentrated grape juice is that the grape juice concentrate has to be greater than 1/7 of the entire volume of the juice. That's the first one. And the second is the juice must taste like grape juice, okay? All right? If these conditions aren't met, then the bracha is shehakol. It doesn't qualify. I remember a story once, I think, when Chacham Yosef first came in his first trips to the United States, and he was given a particular type of grape juice to make a bracha on for kiddush. Everyone stands up. He's saying the kiddush, and then he says, Sami Maranan, Baruch Hashem, Shakol Niyah Bidvaro, he said, and everyone was taken aback, and essentially he gave a whole 1 hour class just on the ratios of the grape juice and how it potentially would be considered water or more towards water and less towards juice, and the importance of making sure that the grape juice, even from concentrate, has a proper amount of grape juice in it to be considered for the bracha of borei pri hagefen. Okay, so that's the tutorial on how to manufacture or produce wine, alcohol, raisin wine, and grape juice. So now, when it comes to halakha, there really are three concepts that we're going to be dealing with. The first one is what we said, yain nesech. Yain nesech is wine that was actually used for any sort of idolatrous libations, wine libations. Okay. Then we have stam yainam, which is wine that is owned by non-Jewish individuals, and we have what's called maga akum, which is basically Jewish wine that is touched by a non-Jewish person. Okay? Okay, so Yain Nesech, which was we said which is the wine that's actually used for any sort of idolatry, libations or services, that is prohibited to benefit from. It's called Asur Bahana'ah, and that's on a Torah prohibition level. So what's called Midoraita. Like all items that are associated with any sort of idolatry, we cannot have any sort of benefit from them. Stam Yenam, so wine that is owned by non-Jewish people, and Maga Akum, wine that is Jewish wine that is touched by a non-Jew, okay, particularly a non-Jew that has, that is connected to sort of idolatry, okay. Those two are prohibited by Chachamim, by rabbinical decree for two reasons. The first one was to prevent intermarriage, okay, and you're going to find that a lot of these safeguards were put in place by Chachamim, by the sages over centuries and thousands of years in order to safeguard, the assimilation of the Jewish people, into other nations. So that's the first one. And so they prohibited one from drinking wine, non-Jewish wine, because what does wine do? Wine brings people together. You have wine and cheese, you have wine and this, you have, I don't know, wine is a social drink. So, that was the first concern of our sages and elders, was to make sure that to prevent this mingling, to prevent intermarriage. In addition, the prohibition also was extended not just drinking to not getting any benefit, both from wine that's owned by non-Jewish people and by Jewish wine that's touched by a non-Jewish people, because there's a chance that it was used or moved by the non-Jewish individual with the intent to pour for their idol, that type of thing. So, what's the intent behind that? And we'll get into sort of some details there. So let's talk about deriving benefit for a second in halacha. Now, even if the wine is permitted in benefit, it may still be prohibited to do business with such products according to some opinions. And, barring any sort of life-threatening circumstances, one may not get any benefit from yain nesech, from wine, again, that was used for idolatrous purposes, even in an abnormal manner. For example, bathing in the wine, for example. Maybe, in some spas, they have these wine baths. People take wine in, it's great for the skin, so that may be an issue. Some communities, in the Jewish world are lenient, some are more strict. So, I guess that's on a case-by-case basis. Okay, so let's talk about the kinds of wine that are subject to prohibition. And we'll talk about some of the products of wine. Now, we talked about sort of, Jewish wine that's touched by non-Jewish person who has some sort of, idolatrous purpose behind it. So that can only prohibit the wine. That can only prohibit wine, but not vinegar, okay? If the vinegar had been touched while it was still wine, the fermentation does not remove the prohibition. Now, there were some authorities that were concerned that, one would mistake vinegar for wine that's still fermenting, or that each person has different sense for distinguishing between wine and vinegar. So, they assume that what we call vinegar is still problematic. And there are actually some do disagree entirely, but many recommend following a strict view, when it comes to sort of, vinegar or wine that is vinegar that is, from wine type of thing. And we're very, very careful not even to use that. Okay. In the practice, basically, we are strict unless, unless the liquid bubbles like vinegar when it's poured on the ground, something from the Gemara. But many later authorities in halacha, do say that if it's not drank as wine anymore, there is room to be lenient, especially, if the non-Jewish person was not an idol worshiper. And we'll get into some of the differences there. Okay. If vinegar from a barrel bubbles intensely when it's poured, it has some sort of, I guess, some intensity to it, one can assume it has been vinegar for at least a while, minimum of 3 days, and any contact with non-Jewish touch is really irrelevant at that point. Okay. There are some that claim that modern day wine vinegar is not the same vinegar as in the times of the Gemara, because even industrial vinegar doesn't bubble as the Talmud describes it. But there are other authorities that find the basis for this test, in modern day science as a measure of acidity. That bubbling is a measure of acidity. Okay. Another idea is we are strict to assume liquid from unripened grapes, which called boser, is also subject to this prohibition of maga'akum. It should not be touched by non-Jews. Wine spirits, so the distillate of the grape also is used as a base for liqueurs like arak, for example. Arak is a mixture of distillate of grapes with anise seed that's added to it. Okay, happens to be my favorite alcoholic beverage. And so wine spirits such as arak are also included in the definition of wine, unless it was previously pasteurized or cooked at some point. Okay, all right. So that's sort of the products. Okay. Now we talked about the idea of mevushal, cooking the wine, or mefustar, or pasteurizing it. Chachamim did not include cooked wine in their decrees because cooked wine or pasteurized wine is not fit to serve for idol worship. Okay, that had to be the best, purest wine, and so while some authorities, the early authorities of halacha, the Geonim, define cooking, quote unquote, for these purposes as boiling, the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud, says some of the wine must evaporate. Some say that they're one and the same. The boiling is really just sufficient, while others require sort of a change of taste or a minimizing of the alcohol content. So you have a bit of this argument, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach and Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul, one of the Sephardic halachic authorities, they argue that pasteurization cannot be considered cooking because the vapor is mixed right back into the wine. Okay, whereas Rav Moshe Feinstein and Chacham Ovadia Yosef, they claim that boiling is what it hinges on, and evaporation is just a sign of it, but it's not necessary. Okay, both Rav Moshe Feinstein and Chacham Ovadia Yosef require pasteurization to a temperature that exceeds about 175 Fahrenheit. Okay, and other authorities insist on a minimum of 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so you have it's on this basis that a lot of the kosher agencies, such as the OU, for example, they'll permit wine that undergo flash pasteurization to be labeled either as what's called mevushal or mefustar. Actually, you'll find this sort of in the corner there of the wine labels. Now, what about other grape products? Okay, now even though grape seeds, okay, again, another foreshadow, we're going to talk about grape seeds very soon from a health aspect. Even though grape seeds are subject to the prohibition and one cannot get benefit from them for 12 months until they dry and are then washed, grapeseed oil is not subject to the idea of stam yeinam. Can be used immediately, okay, and it doesn't have to have any sort of process, okay, to it. Grapeseed extract, which is made of seeds, it does need an actual certification to ensure that it was removed within 24 hours since crushing. Okay, tartaric acid, which is a byproduct of winemaking, that's permitted after rinsing off of the sediment or waiting 12 months. But nowadays, since it's refined to remove all impurities, it is immediately acceptable. Okay. Now, what about mixtures of wine, or ta'arovot, as it's called? Now, since the whole prohibition of what's called stam yeinam, what's called wine that is non-Jewish wine, basically, since it's only from a rabbinical prohibition aspect, there is room to be lenient in situations of what's called safek, of doubt, especially with our cousins, the Ishmaelim. Okay, the Ishmaelim. We'll talk about that. Okay. Now, if wine is mixed with enough honey or spices or other ingredients that change its taste, it also cannot become asur, cannot become prohibited via maga'akum, by being touched by a non-Jew. That all of a sudden makes it permitted to handle. Okay, the Rambam, Maimonides, he uniquely cites the position of a lot of the early halakha authorities of the Ma'arav, of the Middle East, who held that even a little bit of honey or spice can prevent wine from becoming subject to touch by non-Jewish hands. Although this opinion has not been accepted by many, the custom in Egypt, for example, for generations was to be lenient, like the Rambam, like Maimonides, as all their wine, they say, and according to the sources I have here, all their wine came from Crete, and they added honey. Adding honey was the only means of ensuring it wouldn't become prohibited by non-Jewish touch. Okay, The Radbaz, another halakha authority, Rabbi Divi ben Zimra, he permits such wine touched by Ishmaelim, by Ishmaelites on these grounds, and in situations of great loss, and also allows mixing the touched wine with other wines to nullify it. Okay. Now, if the kosher wine is mixed into a solid food to the point that it's no longer discernible, okay, then also it cannot become prohibited by non-Jewish touch, even if the dish is still raw. If it is discernible, it can become prohibited unless the taste of the wine has changed. Okay. Now, depending on the ratio, watered down wine can be subject to non-Jewish touch as long as the water ruins the taste of the wine. Now, so again, due to this sort of the subjectivity of this whole topic, it really wasn't included in the Shulchan Aruch. But the Rama, or Moshe Isserles, who was the halakha authority for the Ashkenazi world, he writes how a 1-to-6 ratio could be enough to nullify the taste of the wine. Okay, in general, yain nesech, so wine that was used for idolatrous purposes, cannot be nullified by any other wine, just as regular idol worship. Okay, if wine is mixed with mevushal wine and honey, some say the honey might nullify the regular wine to prevent it from becoming prohibited via touch. Others say we treat the mevushal wine like water and nullify it. So it depends on the situation. Okay, a nice interesting note for those of us who enjoy whiskey. There's the whole the whole side aging of whiskey in sherry casks. Sherry wine casks are used to age whiskey. A lot of the really great single malt, whatever they are. Some of them use sherry casks. Rav Moshe Feinstein, he held like the Taz, one of the early commentators on the Shulchan Aruch, that wine is nullified 1 in 6. So you have this nullification that takes place. Even if wine is absorbed into the cherry casks, it's not enough there to really have significant effect on the liquor. Okay, so let's get into sort of who can prohibit wine. We touched upon Ishmaelim, idol worshippers. Let's really get into a little bit of detail with that. Now, the touch of adult idol worshippers prohibits wine from both drinking and benefit, but children can only prohibit drinking. Okay, now the status of a child changes to adult regardless of the age when they begin to carry the name of their god and all these, they mention the name of their god, that type of thing. So that might imply that they think about it when the wine is being poured, because they've seen the service and how it's performed in their rituals and their rites. Okay, so that might be something to consider when the child sort of transitions to an adult. Just mentioning the name of their god in passing because that's common jargon, for example, for such and such sake, or speaking profanely, that doesn't register as necessarily familiar to pass the threshold of childhood. Now, Ishmaeli Muslims, for all intents and purposes, are not considered idol worshippers. So to the extent where we have a halakha in the Shulchan Aruch, that if a person finds himself in a mosque, they can daven there because there are no idols found in a mosque. So their wine, and that's besides the danger factor of being in a mosque these days. But I mean, in general speaking, if you were in a mosque where that was peaceful, maybe you'd be able to daven there. Now, so we said, since they're not considered idol worshippers, their wine and wine they touch is only prohibited from drinking because of intermarriage. So that brings it to a level of a rabbinical injunction rather than a Torah-based injunction. Okay, I should add, I know that alcohol is prohibited in the Muslim faith. Okay, so this must be, maybe we're talking about grape juice, or we're talking about some form of maybe very dilute wine, perhaps. Who knows? Okay, a lot of the early and later halakhic authorities unanimously voiced this ruling. Okay, that it's only prohibited from drinking because of intermarriage. Okay, their touch, without any sort of intention, will not prohibit the wine at all, because this decree against the non-Jewish touch of wine, maga akum, stems primarily from wariness of idol worship and not intermarriage. Okay, so it's amazing how, again, when I went through the notes on this and researched this, it's really amazing how we see, again, another interface between something that is physical and our intention that goes into it. Not only our intention, the intention of somebody else that goes into something, and their contact with it, and their physical contact with it. How it has an effect spiritually on that, which we use now for spiritual purposes. Okay, So these rulings that we said that apply to all non-idol worshiping non-Jews, and to those from an idolatrous nation who accept upon themselves to not worship idols. So Bnei Noach, for example, it wouldn't have a problem touching the wine, only because of intermarriage. We have to be careful of that. Okay. Yes, Meyer.
Rabbi, just so that I understand, if the reason is intermarriage, then what does Mevushal do to allow them to serve the wine?
So you're right. Mevushal takes it to a level where it's not even considered to, since it takes it away from a level where it's not even considered sort of worthy of being served by I guess idol worship. Maybe the next extension of that is that it's not even sort of a socially acceptable drink anymore. So that Chachamim say, okay, even that sort of, we're not worried about intermarriage because it's mevushal. It doesn't have a quality to it that it's you're gonna see it commonly in social circles.
But in today's day and age, I mean, we know that's not quite the case. I mean, there's exceptionally good mevushal wine, like non-mevushal wines.
Right.
So, and most probably used in dates and used in people getting to know each other. Very good quality. So how do we get around that?
You're right.
Saying okay, they could pour if it's mevushal, but if it's not mevushal, they can't.
Right. I mean, again, I think when it comes down to it, the question is, so the person pouring it, their permission to pour it, for example, you have the bartender who's doing it for you, or you have the waiter or the attendant who's doing it for you, on that level, as opposed to now all of a sudden you're invited over to, whatever, Ibrahim al Abu whatever, to a house to enjoy whatever, a glass of whatever, then maybe there is a bit of a difference there, and that we have to be careful of that, I would say.
So when the Ishmaelite is pouring the wine, it's not an idol worship issue, but again, it's kind of hard to understand. So it's an intermarriage issue, but the mevushal thing somehow makes it okay.
And I think even within the intermarriage issue, the question is how is it being poured? Is the person pouring it basically doing it sort of out of their on the level of a job, a servant level type of thing, or is this now are you enjoying this in a social situation where you're at a wine party and there's other people and you're being served this wine? So I think at that level, I would probably venture to be very careful to enjoy even mevushal wine within that circle, within that, okay, you're at a business meeting, maybe there's some room to say, yes, okay, this is, it's part and parcel of the business world to have this, this type of, business meeting with wine. Okay, so mevushal wine better than non-mevushal wine. You're there for business, you're not there for pleasure or social type of thing, so yeah, I mean, again, we have to be careful. There are safeguards that have to be there. You're right.
And the law doesn't say man pouring to man or man pouring to woman. It doesn't differentiate that. It just says because of intermarriage, they're not allowed to pour. But like in a business meeting, let's say you have a business meeting with all women or all men, right? Then is it different? Is it not different?
So now we're entering into we're entering into the environment of what is called tzniut. What is tzniut? What are the modesty requirements? Are there requirements for modesty as well? What is your personal level of modesty? Ideally, it would be better for male waiters to be around serving males the wine and not female waiters around serving the wine.
Yeah, I was thinking strictly on the intermarriage point. In other words, if it's the intermarriage prohibition that says that you're not allowed to drink, you could benefit from, but you could drink the wine that a Muslim is serving you. You cannot drink. You could benefit from it, right? That a Muslim is serving you but you can't drink it because of intermarriage, right? So what if it's a man serving a man? Like, is the prohibition still there? You have a Muslim man serving a Jewish man wine that's not mevushal.
Sure. He says to you, hey, I've got a daughter for your son.
Okay. Yeah.
You know, you're a great person. Let's get this together. Let's do something with this. And that has happened. The Gemara records lots of instances like that.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Okay. Very good. Okay. According to the Balei HaTosfot, so the grandchildren of Rashi, commentators on the Talmud, they say that the Christians of our times are not considered true idol worshippers. That's what they rule. That's what they're saying. So the wine they touch or own is only prohibited from drinking and not benefit. And this, of course, has far-reaching ramifications throughout all the halachot of Yain Nesech, primarily for Ashkenazim. Okay, I think Shulchan Aruch is still very, very strict for when it comes to Christians. That's considered, Hamad talks about it a lot. It's still considered a form of avodah zarah or shituf. In Ashkenazim, give it more of a leniency, maybe because of the danger of living in European countries, and rulings like that might put a lot of communities at risk, so to speak. And we know the church used to censor a lot of things that were coming out of the Talmud and things like that. Okay. Okay. Yeah, just as a point of fact, the Shach and the Taz, the Ashkenazi commentators, they consistently comment how each ruling in the Shulchan Aruch doesn't apply completely, especially in their communities. And oftentimes, they bump the prohibition down one level. So if something is prohibited from benefit, they often say it's only prohibited from drinking. And if it's only from drinking, then it's completely permitted. So, obviously each case has to be evaluated individually, but it's cool to see like how their perspective and general, way of coming out with halakha rulings in this area, it's actually quite valuable. Now, what about someone who's a convert? Okay, so a conversion candidate who underwent Brit Milah, for example, but did not complete their conversion with the Tevilah, with the immersion in a mikveh, they only prohibit the wine from drinking and not benefit. Why? Because they left the fold of idolatry, okay? But they haven't entered the Jewish family yet completely, so intermarriage is still prohibited, okay? And even according to the lenient opinion in these cases, the leniency only extends to the touch. His own wine is still prohibited from drinking. Okay, there are some older there are some halachot when it comes to avadim, which really aren't relevant to our day and age. Servants or a maidservant, a manservant in the times of the Gemara, maidservants, non-Jewish, did observe. They were considered the converts on a certain level, and did observe certain halachot. Certain mitzvot they also did, and their connection with wine is also documented in the Talmud. Now, what about a Jewish person? Let's see. A Jewish person who rejects Judaism for idolatry, okay? He prohibits wine with his touch, okay? Now, at the same time, he's also believable if he says he repented and did teshuvah, okay? Now, meanwhile, a Jewish person who rejects other mitzvot. So, for example, he's mumar orlot. That's a term used for someone who rejects the mitzvah of brit milah, of circumcision. He cannot prohibit the wine with his touch, okay? Because his rejection is only in a certain area of Judaism, not all of Judaism, okay? Nice halacha I came across. Anusim, the conversos, the Maranos of old, okay? No matter how well-meaning, they are suspect of halachic infidelity, and also they're not in a position to guard their wine from the touch of non-Jews. Therefore, one may not drink their wine or even believe them even under oath regarding the status. Okay? However, they may be believed regarding other people's wine, and their touch does not qualify as maga akum. They can touch the wine, not a problem. Okay? Now, this of course is true only if they remain loyal to halacha at home and only put on an outward facade of conversion like they did, during the Spanish Inquisition times. Okay? But if they ever abandon halacha at home, even if they kept halacha at the beginning of their conversion, they are no different from the goyim, unfortunately. Okay? Okay, so let's get into a couple of points when it comes to now this idea of touching the wine. I know Stan talked about touching the wine. What do we do? Okay, at the first class, he asked that question. So wine can only be prohibited in benefit from non-Jewish touch if three conditions are met. Okay, here we go. It can only be prohibited and benefit. Right, here we go. One, he intended to touch it. That's his intention was to touch it. Unlike a child, for example, who has no intention, they just touch everything. He knows that it's wine, okay? And he's not busy with any other activities. Those three things, okay? Now, some say that if an idolater shakes an open bottle, even without picking it up or touching the wine, the contents still become prohibited in benefit, but there are many that disagree, okay? Some say that shaking is not the same as stirring, and one should not be strict in cases where there's a great loss, the wine's worth has a great value to it, all right? Only if he picks it up and shakes it is it prohibited. Meanwhile, again, there are others that are lenient, even in that case, because shaking cannot prohibit wine, only stirring can prohibit it, okay? Now, another idea. If he picks it up and pours, even without shaking, that which was poured out is prohibited, and the contents of the rest of the wine are sort of up for debate, okay? Now, what if he picked it up and put it right back down without shaking or touching the contents? It's permitted, okay? Similarly, just touching the bottle creates no prohibition, okay? Now, if something is already touching the wine and then the idolater touches it as well, the wine is not prohibited at all, as it's no worse than touching the bottle alone, even if he explicitly states he's doing so with some sort of, idolatrous intention, okay? So that's where touch of wine comes into play, okay? And that sort of completes the halachic section when it comes to kosher wine. All right, it's quite fascinating. Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of wine. Grapes in particular, wine are packed with super amounts of antioxidants. One of them called polyphenols, others called proanthocyanidins. Okay, so the first thing we're talking about is the extract of grapeseed extract. Okay, if you want to benefit from the polyphenols, these antioxidants that are found in wine, but you don't want to have the alcohol content and the calories, I should add as well, because alcohol does add a significant amount of calories to one's nutrition. Okay, so if you want to avoid the alcohol, then really consider a grapeseed extract supplement. Okay, grapes have been used as far back as ancient Greece for their health promoting benefits. Modern science also has shown that there may be, there is truth to what our ancestors believed, about what are called the jewels of the vine. Okay, just like many other fruits, grapes have been studied for lots of benefits, everything from heart health to overall longevity. Okay, and seeds of the grape really provide different antioxidants than the actual fruit, and we're going to talk about that right now. Okay, so grapeseed extract is really like the term is an extract from the seed, not the fruit of the grapes. Okay, the grape seeds contain high amounts of what are called polyphenols, which are types of antioxidants that have specifically demonstrated evidence to support a healthy cardiovascular system and already healthy blood pressure and to promote longevity. Okay, now while all polyphenols are good for you, the ones that are found in grape seed are a specific type, and the great term here is oligomeric proanthocyanidins, or just proanthocyanidins for short, okay? And they have unique benefits. So beside grape seeds, there are other proanthocyanidin-rich foods like black tea, black currant, bilberry, and cranberry, okay? Now, for the plants themselves, what do these proanthocyanidins do for the plants themselves? Well, they actually are a defense mechanism against predators and other threats found in nature, but for humans, they actually provide protection against what we know are rusting cells, or the cells from rusting, which are called free radicals that might occur within our cells. Okay, so drinking wine in moderation is associated with many health benefits, but taking a grapeseed extract is really a good alcohol-free way to really obtain the benefits as well. So let's go through them. It helps maintain already healthy blood pressure. Grapeseed extract helps support healthy blood pressure. Why? When we consuming grapeseed extract, if you're having some grapes and you're sort of chewing on crunching on the grape seeds instead of spitting them out, you actually are able to boost your levels of nitric oxide in the body. Nitric oxide has the effect of dilating blood vessels and optimizing flow of blood through the body. Okay. Interestingly enough, grapeseed extract supports blood pressure levels already in the normal range by making it easier to keep a handle on stress. Okay, The two are related. It's not a myth. Okay. There was a study that found that supplementing with grapeseed extract for 16 weeks was good for both blood pressure and stress levels. Okay. Healthy blood flow, we said that, there's the properties that it boosts nitric oxide levels, okay, supporting healthy blood flow, which is incredible. It also supports healthy levels of platelets, which helps with clotting blood. There was a great study, interesting study that found that 14 days of a daily intake of grapeseed extract supplement improved leg comfort in women. Okay, so maybe connected to restless leg syndrome, for example, who sat for prolonged periods of time. Another way, so that's the one idea. Brain health. Okay, grape seeds may actually benefit memory. There is some preclinical research that showed that proanthocyanidins, the antioxidants in grape seeds extract, promote all sorts of what's called basal synaptic transmission of the neural transmission in the brain, in the part of the brain that's known as the hippocampus, which is really intimately involved in memory. Okay. And in clinical research, grapeseed extract has led to improvements in cognitive function. Okay. And really, there's more research needed, but that's what's initially shown. Okay. You get also, there's a lot of preclinical data that shows the grape seeds are great in healthy cell division and growth. Okay. There is some preliminary clinical research that found that grapeseed extract is associated with liver health benefits. Okay. Especially when you combine it with other antioxidants like vitamin C. Certain healthy, certain kidney health biomarkers like glomerular filtration rate and creatinine, these were improved with supplementation with grapeseed extract. So again, preliminary research here, but it's really promising how it has a lot of these effects on the body. Beautiful skin. Yeah, I think you'll find, women probably know this more than men, you'll find in a lot of skin products, grapeseed extract is found in a lot of skin products, cream that has grapeseed extract in it that's applied to the cheeks twice a day, resulted in a decreased melanin, increased elasticity, increased moisture in the skin, okay? There was a meta-analysis of 19 studies found that grapeseed extract compared to a placebo improved all sorts of oxidative stress biomarkers in the body, reduced levels of inflammation, markers of inflammation, C-reactive protein, okay? All of these basically are incredible for whole body wellness, for brain, heart, and beyond, okay? Quick tip on how we take it. So like any dietary supplement, you want to basically optimize the dose. Generally, we're talking about 100 milligrams per day, all right? Or as recommended, I should say, as all the bottles say, by your healthcare practitioner. Now, the other potential powerful part of the grape is the skin. And the grape skins contain a really, really incredible product that's really a hot topic since the early 2000s called resveratrol, okay? It was shown to extend lifespan in many multiple animal models, okay? And we're going to talk about the potential, what it's good for, okay? Resveratrol is a polyphenol, another antioxidant found in red wine, grapes, berries, some other plants. A lot of it is connected to a possible explanation, what's called the French paradox, which is the observation that French people who consume moderate amounts of wine have low incidence of coronary artery disease, despite having diets that are very rich in saturated fats and butters and oils and croissants and all these things. Okay. There are many experiments involving short-lived animals such as flies, worms, bees, fish, mice that have found increased lifespan, as much as 40% increase in lifespan. It's actually challenging to measure lifespan in human trials because of our longevity, our long lifespan. All right, so it's more practical to measure the biomarkers that reflect our health status. Okay, and that's what we're going to find. That's what we're going to talk about right now. Resveratrol has a great effect on our metabolic system, on how we take care of our blood sugar, on oxidative stress, on type 2 diabetes. Okay, there was a clinical trial of about 150 adults that suffered from diabetes for at least 5 years. They took about 200 milligrams of resveratrol for about 24 weeks, and they had reductions in fasting blood glucose, fasting blood sugar, reduction in what's called hemoglobin A1C, the biomarker for glucose levels, and oxidative stress was less. Fasting insulin was decreased, insulin resistance was decreased, and so really a lot of benefits there. There was a meta-analysis of 17 randomized controlled trials of about 900 patients with diabetes who took at least 500 milligrams of resveratrol, and that lowered their fasting glucose, lowered total cholesterol, lowered all the markers, lowered blood pressure as well compared to the placebo. Okay, so it seems that it may also improve what's called cardiac remodeling. Okay, the harmful changes in the size of the heart and function that come with cardiac disease or damage. Okay, we said hypertension also there. Bones. We know that the body is continuously recycling old bone for new bone in what's called bone remodeling. Okay, and as we age, past our adulthood, bone breakdown tends to exceed the rate of bone formation. Resveratrol actually might reverse this, and that'll result in a net increase in bone formation. Okay, different groups of people at high risk of osteoporosis really have gotten some great benefits from supplementing with resveratrol. There was one trial where men with obesity took 1,000 milligrams of resveratrol. They had an increase in the bone mineral density of the spine, an increase in other markers for bone formation. There was another randomized trial of type 2 diabetics, took resveratrol, and also found increased bone content, bone mineral content. Okay, a lot of good stuff. Postmenopausal women. There was a study. This one was out of Sweden, I think, where they found that taking just 75 milligrams of resveratrol twice a day, that increased their bone mineral and actually it resulted in less fracture risk or hip fractures over about a 10-year term of tracking these patients, these participants in the study. So we see basically, effects on the heart, bone health, metabolism, longevity, all these biomarkers really seem to give us an idea that resveratrol is great for healthy aging. So that coupled with grapeseed extract, are really good things that you might want to include, even for small amounts of time. Instead of all the time, do a 3-month span or 6-month span of your grapeseed extract and resveratrol, then stop that and do another antioxidant, sort of cycle through them type of thing. Or make a conscious effort to include them in your diet, whether it's berries, cranberries, the grapes, the dark grapes with the seeds, and chew the seeds, don't throw them out. That type of thing. Good quality organic wine a little bit, if you can get that too also, so it's got less of the preservatives in it, and you'll derive more benefit from the wine itself. So that's my take for this evening on grapes and grape seeds.
A question.
Yeah, Ron.
First of all, thanks. Are the benefits that you're talking about with grape seeds available by using grapeseed oil, say, versus something like a high quality canola oil?
So good question. So I think grapeseed oil will give you some benefit, but most of the studies showed the actual extract of the grapeseed itself, which was just more than just the oil of the grapeseed. Okay, definitely. Even a good quality, high quality canola oil is not gonna come anywhere near mimicking, the health effects of grapeseed oil or grapeseed extract. That's for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so you need the extract, really.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So,
yes, Mara.
I wanted to go back to the mevushal because
yeah, sure.
It's one of those, the whole wine thing. I understand where the rules and the laws derived from, but I still have trouble really understanding it, in today's day and age. And I know some rules we don't change, but the whole intermarriage thing using wine, does it really apply today? What's the difference if somebody's, serving whiskey? Now, in the case of intermarriage, I mean, any other alcohol, liqueurs, nothing, as long as it doesn't contain wine, why isn't the intermarriage thing a issue? I mean, if it contains grape, then we got a problem for intermarriage. If it doesn't contain grape, then the intermarriage doesn't come into play. Why?
The bottom line is it is an issue. It doesn't matter what we're talking about, what hard or soft beverage we're talking about. If there's a social gathering, there is a risk of intermarriage. No doubt about it.
No, true, but it's not strictly by this law. Like
No,
specifically,
there are different laws. There are different laws that come into play, not just law. When it comes to the
no.
wine, you know, I think over the years, maybe like, wine was seen, in many circles because of its sacramental significance compared to like whiskey, vodka, rum, all those different types of the arak. Arak has a wine derivative, but compared to all those other hard liquors, the sacramental value of wine combined with the fact that traditionally speaking, wine has been more of, I think, of a social drink overall than a lot of the hard liquors. Hard liquors seem to be less so. But maybe today it's more prevalent. Where we're having a lot of the whiskeys and this and that, and it's more commonplace. But the sense I get is that wasn't as prevalent that in previous times. And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Like, there's so many other liqueurs out there that like if a bartender who is Muslim is serving somebody at a dinner, wine, then the person can't drink it because it's the intermarriage becomes an issue. The idol worship is not an issue because he's Muslim. The intermarriage becomes an issue. But if that same Muslim bartender is serving the person a liqueur that does not contain grape, that's okay. So, right? I mean, so that's where I have trouble understanding how does that rule apply today,
And we're assuming that the wine he's serving is not mevushal.
Yeah,
right?
The wine is not mevushal. No,
right.
The wine is not mevushal. So the prohibition is not the idol worship because it's a Muslim.
Right.
The prohibition is the intermarriage. So now you can't drink that wine if he serves it to you. But if he serves you a hard liquor or a liqueur or any other thing that doesn't contain grape, then it's okay. So somehow it's the grape that makes the intermarriage thing a problem, and that's where I have trouble understanding.
And perhaps that's where again, with the sacramental value of the grape, of the wine, seems to have another factor. It seems to be involved, over and above just the liquor value or the alcoholic value. I think.
Right. So that's the idol worship part, but that's not an issue with the Muslim. That's the thing.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That Muslim's going to be in trouble with his religious authorities for serving.
Exactly.
Right. And this is a hard question to answer, and it's a sensitive, But do you think, in the eyes of the non-Jew, this law of serving, not serving, mevushal, there's more damage to Jews than there's good?
No, I think if we are honest with our non-Jewish neighbors, and we're clear in the sense that everything we consume has a spiritual aspect to it, has an energetic spiritual aspect to it. And so just like, when I go to sleep and I sleep all night long and I get up in the morning and my hands cannot touch anything until I've washed my hands because there's a spiritual impurity that lies on my hands. At the same level, I express that idea that there's a certain spiritual energy that we associate with everything. And so, if your touch of, because you're not careful with certain things, spiritually speaking or energetically speaking, that's important to us. So I think it's again one of the safeguards that keeps us sort of whole as a nation, and it's truthful. It's being truthful. It's being upfront.
But what is the message to the non-Jew? That they're spiritually impure by that argument? No,
possible. So it's just from an energetic perspective, it's different energies. There are different energies here, and the energies don't mix.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Stan smiling.
No, I just had like two questions. The one is, if we have guests over on Shabbat or Yom Tov in our house, and they're all Jews, but they're not Shomer Shabbat. Like, for example, you might have Jewish people that come to your house, but they drive to your house. Are you, from what I understand, I'm supposed to serve mevushal wine in a situation like that, not regular wine that's not mevushal amongst Jews? Or am I wrong?
You may be wrong, in the sense that it depends. So it's a very sensitive situation when when someone's coming to you for a Shabbat to have a Shabbat meal with you, and okay, unfortunately they're driving, but they're still coming to you for Shabbat. So in other words, like the whole basis of desecration of Shabbat is a demonstration that the person really doesn't believe that God exists and God didn't create the world and there's no thing a Shabbat. At the same time, here this person is coming to you to Shabbat, and so that can't prove that they really don't believe there's a God, because they're coming to you for Shabbat to prepare a table. Okay, maybe they're coming socially. Nonetheless, they recognize that the subject, they recognize the idea of Shabbat. So at that level, I don't think it disqualifies them from touching the wine.
Right. Okay. The other thing is that I read I guess a commentary, I think through Chabad, I don't know, Chabad website, or I heard this from a Chabad rabbi giving a talk, that Havdalah and I guess Kiddush that we do on Shabbat, the level at which the Kiddush takes place is different if it's done on grape juice or if it's done on red wine. So that the sort of gold standard is to do the Kiddush on red wine, not on white wine, but on red wine. So I wanted to just hear your comments about that, because it's very common to go to a synagogue and the Kiddush is made on a grape juice. And if that's the case, if you're holding that you want to do it like according to the gold standard, are you actually Yoitze, have you fulfilled the mitzvah of Kiddush by saying Amen when somebody else says it on grape juice?
Okay, so in one's own home, it is highly recommended, or by one's own table for Seudah, it is highly recommended, or for Havdalah, it is highly recommended, and is preferable to perform Kiddush and Havdalah over red wine and not over grape juice. It is of higher value. Also, it shows greater honor of the Shabbat, because you're ascribing a certain greater significance to the ritual. If you're at a kiddush in the shul and someone's making and the person's making kiddush over grape juice, okay, you don't necessarily have to taste the grape juice. You could say amen, and you're saying you're gonna make a bracha of mezonot, and that qualifies as you participating in the kiddush. If you're someone who's careful not to have not to make kiddush only over wine, not over grape juice. So you're at a kiddush, you don't have to necessarily taste the grape juice. You can just you hear the bracha over the grape juice, say amen, and then immediately you're having a mezonot and you're covered. I mean, that counts for you having that. You're fine for a kiddush. You don't have to have the grape juice. So what's the question?
What if you do sip the grape juice? Does that
if you do have it
before you have mezonot, does that put you in a situation where
no, not at all, not at all, not at all. It's not your own seudah. You're participating in a seudah of others, of a kiddush. That's what's being served. You can have it.
But if for some reason, like some people cannot drink red wine because they've got health issues,
Of course.
or if you've got a headache, or if you can normally drink it but you're not feeling well or whatever, then I assume it's okay.
Yeah, definitely. We thank God we live in a marketplace now where you can get, light wine 3%, 2%, 4%, 5%. There's different levels of percentages of wine. So, semi-sweet, semi-dry, light. So, light sweet. So there's so many options available now that, one should do the best that they can. And of course, if one cannot have any alcohol wine, they can only have grape juice, then of course they fulfill their requirements and they're yotze, as we know, with grape juice, no problem. As long as the grape juice qualifies to be done for is for kiddush, and it's real grape juice.
Okay, so I know it's getting late. Just one last question is that there seems to be different opinions in terms of making kiddush by a certain zman. Some people don't seem to be bothered about it. Other poskins I hear, like for example, you're supposed to make kiddush. If you finish Musaf at a certain time, there's a certain time, I don't know if it's exactly how they calculate it, but is it important that the Kiddush gets said before a certain Zman? Just like you're supposed to make Shachrit for a certain Zman, Mincha for a certain Zman, does Kiddush fall into that category as well?
That's a very good question. It's very important that one does not risk fasting on a Shabbat. So we have to be very careful, especially, in larger congregations, and they're starting a little bit later, 9:30 type of thing, and you're not finishing until after midday or close to after midday or close to midday. You're risking this the risk of fasting on a Shabbat, and we don't want to do that. So you want to make sure to have kiddush done before the midday for sure. So and that's the importance of trying to finish, at a reasonable time and have kiddush before midday. So there is a zman when it comes to the kiddush, no doubt about it.
So if you're in the synagogue and you make your kiddush on mizunot, and then you've sort of fulfilled your mitzvah of kiddush, but then when you come home, like an hour later or so, and then you want to make the kiddush on the red wine, should one do that, or if you already made the kiddush, you shouldn't do it again?
So some are particular to follow the concept of ein kiddush ela bimkom seudah. So wherever there's a seudah, you can make a kiddush. So even though you may have done it at shul, for example, you come home, you're at your seudah. There's nothing stopping you from making the bracha b'rpia gefen, at your table, on Shabbat for Shabbat lunch. Because essentially that's what the bracha is. There is no other additional bracha on the kiddush of Shabbat lunch. It's really just b'rpia gefen. Okay, so and then you could say it on wine, and then you plan on having wine during the meal. That's exempt, and you now can have wine throughout the whole meal based on the kiddush that you did. So I'm particular about that. That I'll always do kiddush at my table whenever I have a meal, and even if one person has no kiddush, I'll do kiddush again if they haven't heard it. The first time I did it. So that's definitely you can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
I mean, I have one more, but I don't want
Sure.
to bother everybody.
Stan, go ahead. I'm fine.
Okay,
I
just
have to
one
jump off, Rabbi, because
Okay.
I got
Okay.
late. But
I
thank you so much.
heard a documentary, actually from Dr. Stephen Gundry, about olive oil. That olive oil is what's good about the Mediterranean diet is that there are toxins and lectins and all kinds of not such good things in the Mediterranean diet, but because they put olive oil on so many of their foods, the olive oil creates the benefit which really makes the Mediterranean diet. And there's supposed to be polyphenols in the olive oil, but he discovered they did research to find that there's a certain olive trees that grow in Morocco in the desert that have got a much higher level of polyphenols, so that you can actually have less olive oil because it's got a much higher concentration. So I think they sell this olive oil out of the States. My question is, I know on Pesach, if a olive oil is extra virgin, we usually don't need a hechsher for it, even for Pesach. So if an extra virgin olive oil doesn't have a hechsher during the rest of the year, does it have to have a special? If there's a special extra virgin olive oil that's made that doesn't have a hashgacha on it, can we still use that extra virgin olive oil? Do we have to have something that has been does have a hechsher?
Generally speaking, extra virgin olive oil, if you know for certain it is extra virgin olive oil, because unfortunately in our day and age, what is labeled as extra virgin olive oil may in fact be an admixture of different types of oils that qualify still under the label of or category of extra virgin olive oil. So if you know for sure it is pure extra virgin olive oil, then you can go ahead and use it without a certification on it. That is true. 100%. I would say we definitely need to take a trip to Morocco. That's definitely one of the places I want to visit. It's on my bucket list, and try this olive oil, straight from the tree. Definitely, but yes, and again, with the Mediterranean diet, and maybe that's something we should, I'll put together. Looking at the Mediterranean diet versus other diets, it's probably a good idea. With all oils, even olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, which is great, has so many wonderful benefits. You want to be careful of the fat content, the additional calories that are in the diet. We tend to overdo it with oil in general. We live in sort of, in a trend of nutrition now where, good fats is still a lot of fat. So we have to be careful of that in our diet, and we can derive a lot of benefits that olive oil gives us without having to consume olive oil by consuming other things that contain polyphenols, for example, like the berries and whatnot. So and again, a lot of the studies that I tend to quote, and again, I'm more of a cardiovascular conscious individual. So T. Colin Campbell, Esselstyn, McDougall, Dean Ornish, a lot of these guys talk about the oils and even the great, wonderful, healthy oils having negative effects on our cardiovascular system and our arterial blood flow and that type of thing. So again, I say yes, good extra quality, high quality extra virgin oil, but in very, very minimal as possible, in your diet.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay. Any other questions, guys? Okay. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
you. Thank-
This was
Okay.
such a great class. We love
Awesome,
wine. Spoke to our hearts.
Great. Thank you, Mary. Okay.
Thank you.
Good night, guys.
Hopefully we're all going to live longer after this.
100%.
Man, I hope so.
Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay. לילה טוב. חיים ארוכים.